There's a very good chance that if you're a fan of film, at some point you'd have spoken about how remakes and sequels have dominated Hollywood. Now that's not to say there hasn't been original films being released, as long as you know where to look for them, but with The Creator, this is a big release and it is an original story. Here we have a plot which takes place in a future where there's a war going on between AI and humans, and we follow ex-Special Forces agent Joshua as he's recruited to destroy a world-ending weapon which turns out to be AI in the form of a child. Now, as I said, this is an original story, but from that plot synopsis as well as the trailer, you're probably reminded of many other films you've seen before. And director Gareth Edwards has been very open to the fact that many movies were his source of inspiration here, including films like Apocalypse Now, Blade Runner as well as Akira. Gareth Edwards has certainly shown that he knows what he's doing when it comes to scale, as we saw with his Godzilla film as well as Rogue One and Star Wars story, and here it's just so fantastic what he's been able to produce on a budget of only $80 million. It really does expose these overinflated budgets we see all the time in Hollywood, where you have a film which costs more than twice the amount of The Creator but looks awful in comparison, and the waste of money they have in Hollywood at the moment with certain films, it's no wonder they're making so many losses. The crew for The Creator was quite a small one, so they were able to film on location quite a lot, and they actually went to 80 different locations, which is quite extraordinary. And the film really has benefited from that because it looks beautiful, and that's because it's real, because there's not very much green screen used here, and it's like it should be. It's aided by visual effects and not dominated by them, and that's great. John David Washington plays our main character Joshua, and I've enjoyed him in films like Black Klansman as well as Tenet, and here I think he does the emotional scenes pretty well, but he's still lacking that spark to take him to that next level. And I think with his father Denzel, he's certainly done that with a lot of his roles in the past, where he's remade that character his own, and I just want John David Washington to do that as well. Like, he hasn't really done that yet, I think, where you can really say to yourself, yeah, this is the best guy for the role, no one else could be seen playing it apart from him. But having said that, his character was engaging throughout the whole film, and like I said, when it came to the emotional scenes, they were really well done, especially with those with him and the child called Alfie. In her first ever on-screen role, Madeline Univoyles plays Alfie, and she was fantastic. She is going to be that character you remember the most from this film, and she's the biggest head on the poster as well. And I think in the same way as in the past where people said, oh yeah, remember that kid from The Sixth Sense, how good he was? I think the same is going to be said here with, oh, remember that kid from The Creator, how good she was? I think if she wants to have a acting career, then she's got some great potential already being shown. I would have loved to have seen a few more moments between her and Joshua, because we do get some great conversations on the subject of death, but I think it would have been awesome to have a few more little quiet moments just to help establish that connection even further. And perhaps originally there was supposed to be more in there, and if they were, I think there probably was in the middle portion of the film, because there were a few scenes there which did seem to rush by, where I think it did actually impact the pacing of the film as well. This film is released at a great time when we look at our current climate and how we're getting used to living with AI and with things like ChatGPT ever improving. And there's some really interesting ideas and technology they use here where you think to yourself, one day we might see that or maybe this in our real world. And on the subject of worlds, the world building here is truly remarkable. I think it's one of the best things about the whole movie. And Gareth Edwards has said that he just wants this to be his own film. But I think in the future, if this does well, then sequels should definitely be on the way, because there's so much they could explore here. And that is a question, is this film going to do well? With there being no A-list star here, it hasn't got that draw. Gareth Edwards is a decent director, but he's no, say, Christopher Nolan. And also the film's coming out at the end of September, so we've got all these Halloween films about to release. So a lot of people will be, saving their money for those sort of movies, and maybe not checking out The Creator because they have no idea what it's about. It's not coming off any franchise or anything like that. So I think it has got a lot of struggles in that department. However, they are doing a lot of preview screenings this week to help generate that word of mouth, and hopefully the word of mouth will spread and people will say how good this film is, because it is a very good sci-fi film which people should see on the big screen. There may be no A-list star in this film, but there is still a very good supporting cast with Gemma Chan, Ken Watanabe and Alison Janney as Colonel Howell, who is just really fantastic in this role. Actually fits it like a glove. Recently, when it comes to stories involving an adult and a child, we seem to always compare it to The Last of Us, but I think with this film I want to go back a bit further and relate it to a film called Monsters Inc. And that's because with the character Boo, she's somewhere she's not supposed to be, and as the film goes on, Sully builds that bond with her. And the same can be said for films like Ice Age as well, where we have another kid there, and the communication is also a hurdle in both cases. And the same can be said for the creator, where he has, Joshua has to learn how to communicate with Alfie. And I think having maybe another supporting character like in those films might have helped get some more of those moments out I was talking about earlier into the film. Because as much as I did enjoy the film, it did get slightly repetitive with the Nomad spaceship being all intimidating, coming across the sky, then we get an explosion, then there's another explosion. There's more explosions than me after beans on toast. Even though it may appear I'm moaning a lot in this video, by the time I got to the end of the film, I was sat there and I was just listening to the Hans Zimmer music, which is fantastic, and just taking a breath and mulling it over, and it's just really enjoyable because a lot of people around me were doing the same thing, just having a moment just to sit with your thoughts for a bit. And that's because The Creator is definitely one of my favourite films of the year, and I think with a few improvements here and there, it could have even got into that must-see category as well, but I don't think it quite did that, but at the same time, it's still a solid film and one you should definitely see at the cinema. But what were your thoughts on The Creator? Do you think it was a perfect film? Do you think there were things that it could have refined? Let me know it all down in the comments below. And if you want to watch another video on Screeners Are Review for The Expendables 4.